Hello everyone and welcome to my Y&R Trends channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The gentle hum of the hospital room was a stark and unsettling contrast to the usual cacophony that defined Nikki Newman's life. It was a sound of stillness, of suspended animation, and for a woman whose world was a constant whirlwind of corporate intrigue, familial drama, and the ever-present shadow of her own personal demons, the quiet was almost more terrifying than the crisis that had delivered her here. The events of the week of October 13th to 17th, 2025, would come to be seen as a pivotal turning point, not just for Nikki, but for the entire Newman family, a period where long-buried secrets threatened to bubble to the surface and the very foundations of their empire felt the tremors of a single devastating health scare. It began not with a dramatic collapse at a gala or a public confrontation, but in the deceptive privacy of the Newman ranch, with a slight tremor in her hand that she tried to dismiss, a wave of dizziness she attributed to stress, a profound fatigue that a cup of coffee could no longer conquer. Victor, ever the eagle-eyed patriarch, noticed the subtle changes, the slight pallor beneath her expertly applied makeup, the way she sometimes grasped the edge of a table for support, dismissing his concerns with a wave of her hand and a brittle assurance that she was simply tired, that the latest battle with Audra or the ongoing tension with Adam was taking its toll. But the body has a way of refusing to be ignored, and Nikki's, forged in the fires of addiction and years of immense stress, finally issued an ultimatum she could not refuse. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the facade truly cracked. In the middle of a conversation with Victoria about a new merger proposal, the words on the page in front of her suddenly swam into an indecipherable blur. A cold sweat broke out on her brow, and the room tilted on its axis, a nauseating lurch that sent her stumbling backward into the nearest chair. This was no simple spell of lightheadedness. It was a systemic shutdown, a clear and present danger that even she could not rationalize away. Victor's response was immediate and decisive, a whirlwind of controlled panic that saw her rush to the hospital. His voice a low, commanding growl demanding the best specialists, private suites, and absolute discretion. The news, of course, could not be contained for long, rippling through Genoa City's elite circles with the speed of a wildfire, sparking a wave of concern, curiosity, and, from some quarters, a calculating opportunism. As Nikki was settled into a sterile private room, hooked up to monitors that beeped a steady, rhythmic testament to her fragile state, the family began to gather, each arrival painting a different facet of the complex Newman dynamic. Victoria was the first to arrive, her corporate armor visibly chinked, the powerful CO replaced by a frightened daughter, her eyes wide with a fear she rarely allowed herself to show. She clutched her mother's limp hand, her mind racing with a torrent of what-ifs, the terrifying prospect of a world without her mother's unwavering strength and guidance suddenly feeling like a very real possibility. Her conversations with Victor were terse, charged with a shared anxiety, as they pressed doctors for answers, their immense wealth and power useless in the face of medical uncertainty. Nick arrived soon after, his demeanor a mixture of rugged concern and simmering anger at the situation, at the stress he was sure had contributed to this, and at the forces, both within and outside the family, that constantly pulled at his mother. He was the comforter, the rock, offering a steady presence where Victor was all sharp-edged command, reminding everyone that beyond the business and the betrayals, this was their mother, their matriarch, the heart of their fractured family. The waiting room became a stage for the family's intricate ballet of relationships. When Adam appeared, his entrance was predictably met with a palpable shift in the atmosphere. His concern was genuine, etched into the lines of his face, but it was filtered through a lifetime of perceived exclusion and mistrust. He stood slightly apart from the core group of Victor, Victoria, and Nick, a physical manifestation of the emotional distance that always separated him. His attempts to get concrete information were met with guarded responses, the old wounds of past betrayals making his siblings question his motives. Was he truly worried about Nikki? Or was he assessing the potential power shift, calculating how her absence might affect the balance of power at Newman Enterprises? This suspicion, perhaps unfair but deeply ingrained, created a low-level tension that hummed alongside the worry, a reminder that even in a crisis, the Newman family could never fully unite without the specter of past conflicts rising to the surface. Victor, for his part, watched his children with an inscrutable gaze, his primary focus absolute on the woman behind the closed door, but a part of his mind already working through the strategic implications, the vulnerabilities this crisis exposed. The initial medical reports were frustratingly vague, speaking of severe exhaustion, dehydration, and a body pushed beyond its limits. But for those who knew Nikki's history, the unspoken question hung heavy in the antiseptic air. Was this purely stress-related, or was there a relapse lurking in the shadows? The demon of alcohol was a ghost that had never been fully exorcised from Nikki's life, and in times of extreme pressure, its siren call was always a threat. Victor, haunted by the memories of past struggles, quietly ordered a full toxicology screen, a painful but necessary precaution that he kept to himself, the burden of that suspicion a heavy weight on his heart. He recalled the recent pressures, the escalating corporate war, the internal family scheming, the lingering emotional fallout from Claire's introduction into their lives, and he knew each one could have been a trigger. This uncertainty added a layer of profound emotional complexity to the situation. It was not just about diagnosing an illness, but about confronting a lifelong battle that everyone thought was in a stable, managed remission. The fear was not just of a physical ailment, but of the psychological spiral that could have caused it or could be caused by it. As the week progressed and Nikki drifted in and out of a fitful sleep, her dreams were haunted by fragments of the past, glimpses of old bottles, the feeling of losing control, the shame of past failures. In her more lucid moments, she found the strength to whisper to Victor, her voice a frail echo of its usual commanding tone. She confessed to the overwhelming pressure, the feeling of being stretched too thin, of trying to be the strong matriarch while feeling like she was crumbling inside. These quiet confessions were more revealing than any medical chart, a glimpse into the immense psychological toll of being Nikki Newman. Meanwhile, the outside world did not pause for her hospitalization. At Newman Enterprises, Victoria tried to project an image of unwavering strength, but her focus was fractured, and rivals like Audra Charles sensed the distraction, perhaps seeing an opportunity to advance their own agendas while the reigning queen was sidelined. The corporate machine, ever hungry, saw a moment of potential weakness and began to stir. The impact of Nikki's hospitalization also sent ripples through the lives of those connected to the Newmans by blood and conflict. Noah, deeply affected by his grandmother's condition, found a confidant in Claire, their shared concern for Nikki drawing them closer and strengthening their unique bond, a small silver lining of connection amidst the fear. Elsewhere, Jack Abbott, despite the decades of rivalry with Victor, felt a genuine pang of worry for the woman who was once the great love of his life. His concern was a testament to the enduring, complicated connection they shared, and he found himself offering quiet support to Billy, reminding him that some things transcended corporate wars. And through it all, Victor remained a constant, imposing sentinel at Nikki's bedside. The man known as the Titan, who commanded boardrooms and orchestrated the fates of empires with a single phone call, was rendered powerless, reduced to the simple, terrifying act of waiting. The sight of his hand enveloping hers, of the worry etched deeply into his usually impassive face, was a powerful reminder that for all his power and wealth, his greatest vulnerability had always been, and would always be, the well-being of his Nikki. By the middle of the week, the doctors began to piece together a more complete picture. It was not a simple case of overwork, nor was it, to Victor's immense private relief, a direct relapse into alcoholism. Instead, they diagnosed a severe case of adrenal fatigue, compounded by acute stress-induced hypertension, and a system-wide inflammatory response. Essentially, her body, after years of immense physical and emotional toll, had simply begun to shut down, forcing the rest it had been denied. The treatment plan was as much about mental rest as it was about physical recovery. Strict bed rest, a complete disconnection from work and family stressors, and a long-term regimen of dietary changes and mindfulness practices. It was a prescription for a fundamental lifestyle change, a daunting prospect for a woman whose identity was so intertwined with being at the center of the storm. The very idea of stepping back, of relinquishing control, felt to Nikki like a different kind of death, a surrender of the self she had fought so hard to build and maintain. The revelation of the diagnosis prompted a series of difficult and emotional family conversations. Victoria, forced to confront the role her own ambitions and the demands of the company may have played in her mother's collapse, wrestled with a deep-seated guilt. She vowed to take on more, to shield her mother from the burdens of the business, a promise that came with its own weight and consequences. Nick advocated for a complete retreat, suggesting a prolonged stay at a private, tranquil recovery center far from Genoa City, an idea that Nikki initially resisted with what little strength she could muster. Adam, still navigating the tricky waters of familial trust, offered a surprisingly pragmatic and supportive perspective, suggesting they implement a strict no-business rule during family time, a small but meaningful step toward shouldering the collective burden. These discussions, though fraught with emotion, represented a necessary reckoning, a moment where the family was forced to look at the woman who held them all together and acknowledge the price she had paid for that cohesion. As the week of October 13th to 17th drew to a close, Nikki remained in the hospital, but a corner had been turned. The immediate crisis had passed, replaced by the long, slow road of convalescence. She was awake more often, her voice stronger, her spirit, though battered, beginning to flicker back to life. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with the challenge of changing a lifetime of habits, and the ever-present temptation to fall back into old patterns. The world of Genoa City continued to spin, plots were hatched, deals were made, and betrayals were simmering. But within the walls of that hospital room, a profound shift had occurred. The invincible Nikki Newman had been revealed as human, vulnerable, and in need of care. This vulnerability, while terrifying, also held the seed of a potential renewal, a chance for her to redefine her strength not as the ability to endure endless pressure, but as the wisdom to know when to rest and to accept the support of the family she had built and fiercely protected. Her hospitalization was not an ending, but a dramatic, painful interlude, a stark warning that would echo through the halls of the Newman Ranch and the executive suites of Newman Enterprises for a long time to come, forcing everyone to question the true cost of power and the fragile nature of the foundations upon which their lives were built. That evening, the soft hum of the city outside was drowned out by the storm brewing inside Lily's mind. The day had been long, filled with meetings she barely heard and conversations she barely remembered. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Phyllis's smug smile, Kane's familiar charm turned manipulative, and the shadows of their secret alliance. The thought of them laughing at her, believing she was too naive to uncover their deceit, made her blood boil. After hours of pacing her apartment, Lily finally sat down at her laptop. She opened the secure folder where she had stored all her evidence, emails, financial transfers, encrypted messages, and screenshots of transactions routed through shell corporations. Each one connected Phyllis and Kane in a way that would be impossible to explain away once exposed. But as she stared at the data, she knew she needed more. She needed a smoking gun. Something that would not just hint at betrayal but prove intent. She took a deep breath and called her contact in IT. "It's Lily. I need access to the archive server logs from last quarter," she said. "Everything connected to the Chancellor Winter's marketing division, and anything tied to Kane's consulting firm." The voice on the other end hesitated. "That could take a while, Lily. It's not exactly standard procedure." "Do it quietly," she replied, her tone steady. "No one needs to know I asked." As she hung up, her thoughts drifted back to Kane. How easily he could charm people into trusting him, how good he was at pretending his motives were noble. It was that same gift that had made her fall for him once upon a time. She could still remember the way he used to look at her, how genuine he'd seemed. But that version of Kane was long gone. The man he'd become was a stranger. A desperate, power-hungry schemer willing to destroy her reputation just to feel important again. Meanwhile, at the Grand Phoenix, Phyllis was in her element. She sat at the bar, a glass of red wine in hand, her lips curling into a satisfied smile. She had just finished a call with Kane, assuring him their plan was moving forward. "You just keep pushing those numbers through your firm," she'd said. "I'll handle the rest. By the time Lily figures out what's happening, Chancellor Winters will be in freefall, and she'll be begging us to step in." But as Phyllis ended the call, she caught her reflection in the mirror and paused. For a fleeting moment she felt something, guilt maybe, or fear. She'd been down this road before, schemes that had started with confidence and ended in disaster. But this time she told herself it would be different. This time she'd win. Across town, Kane sat alone in his hotel suite, staring at the stack of paper spread across his table. His conscience wasn't as quiet as he wanted it to be. "You're doing this for justice," he muttered to himself. Lily took everything from you, your job, your reputation. She deserves to feel what you felt. But deep down, a part of him knew it wasn't justice driving him. It was bitterness. And Phyllis, with her fiery ambition and reckless courage, had fanned that bitterness into a full-blown fire. The next morning, Lily arrived at Chancellor Winters early. Devin was already there, seated in the conference room, reviewing a report. He looked up when she walked in and frowned slightly. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Is everything okay?" Lily hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything, but she couldn't. "Not yet. I'm fine," she said, forcing a small smile. "Just focused." Devin studied her for a moment, clearly unconvinced. "Focused on what?" "On protecting what's ours," she replied. He tilted his head. "From who?" Before she could answer, Billy walked in carrying a folder. He gave Lily a brief, knowing glance before turning to Devin. "I've been looking into a few things, and we might have a problem." Devin frowned. "What kind of problem?" Billy laid the folder on the table. "It looks like someone's been leaking internal projections. Nothing major yet, but enough to cause trouble if it keeps up." Lily's stomach tightened. "And you think it's coming from?" Billy nodded. "Kane's firm." Devin's expression darkened. "Kane? Are you serious?" "Serious as a heart attack," Billy said. "And I think Phyllis might be tied to it too. She's been too close to this whole situation, playing nice with everyone all of a sudden. It doesn't add up." Lily exhaled slowly, pretending to process the information, though inside she was already steps ahead. "We'll handle it," she said firmly. "Quietly. For now." After the meeting, Devin stopped her in the hallway. "Lily, what's really going on? You're not telling me everything, are you?" She met his gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet. But trust me, Devin, when I do, you'll understand why I had to keep it quiet." He nodded reluctantly. "Just don't do anything you can't take back." That night, Lily's contact called back. "I found something," he said. "You might want to see this." Within minutes, Lily was staring at her screen in disbelief. There it was, the final piece. An encrypted email exchange between Phyllis and Kane outlining their entire plan, complete with instructions on how to manipulate financial statements and create controlled chaos at Chancellor Winters. The subject line read, Phase 3, Lily's Fall. Lily's heart pounded as she saved the file. She'd done it. She had proof. But as she sat there, staring at the glowing monitor, she realized something. Phyllis and Kane weren't going to go down quietly. Once she exposed them, they would retaliate. And in Genoa City, revenge always came with collateral damage. Still, Lily's decision was made. Tomorrow she would begin phase 1 of her own plan. By morning, everyone would know that Lily Winters was done playing nice.